Hello, everyone. This is Brett here from Pupil Progress. Welcome to another, I suppose, installment of Chats with Pupil Progress. I've been doing these maybe 6 or 7 times now, and I've never known really what to phrase it, but this is exactly what it is. The purpose is I'm always on LinkedIn and I'm always looking at what people are doing in the education space as a former teacher and founder of Pupil Progress. And when I come across someone who's doing something really great, and I think I also believe in too, I always want to have a chat with them because I want to see if we can also share what they're doing, and it might be really useful for school leaders, etc. So I'm going to introduce you to Lauren Morley, and she actually founded a service for schools, which is Food and Mood, and she's going to hopefully talk a lot about that today. So welcome, Lauren. Really appreciate it. And I suppose really we'll just dive into the first question, which is hopefully going to give you a bit of an introduction. Tell us about what you do, tell us who you are, and then we can ask a few more questions that's going to help people understand, well, why is it so important that they should know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I started out as a personal trainer a really long time ago, and then kind of fell in love with nutrition and went on to study sport and exercise science and nutrition. And from there, I kind of, started working with kind of a lot of teenagers and decided to go into schools and kind of, give nutrition sessions and personal training sessions. And from doing that, I fell into kind of mental health and well-being roles, so working in these schools. And I think that's when I kind of first realised this massive kind of food epidemic that we have going on. So I would kind of be standing in the canteen and watch 1,500 students kind of roll in at break time, consuming donuts, ice buns, fizzy drinks, and then kind of, literally watch their behavior kind of change before my eyes. And then the same thing at lunchtime, they would come in, pizzas, chips, fizzy drinks, and then literally they would stand outside my office kind of having anxiety attacks, panic attacks. And it kind of, it was almost a bit like time stood still when I was standing in that canteen, because I was just like, why is no one recognizing the impact that this is having on our children? And so, I decided that I needed to kind of, take what I was doing at that school and take it on a bigger level. So I set up Food and Mood Education to kind of educate young people and staff of the effects that food has on our children's mental and physical health. And so, that's where it started. And I now go around to schools and colleges and sports clubs and holiday clubs and kind of educate on up-to-date nutritional information that's really understandable as well, which I think is really important and really fun. I also work with the Children's Food Campaign. So we've been into Parliament 3 times this year already. We're trying to change the laws on especially children's food. And I'm back up there next Wednesday. We're meeting with the Education Minister to try and get more laws changed around school food, specifically in school food. I also work with a company called the Real Food Rebellion, and so we set up PSHE programs to run in secondary schools. So that's kind of where my kind of background is and what I'm kind of currently doing at the moment. Sorry, my voice is going, I think.
No, it's all good. I mean, this is why I was really excited to speak to you, because I did my degree in sports science. I've always been a keen enthusiast of, as a former PE teacher, I've always been an enthusiast of children engaging in physical activity, lifelong participation in sport, getting your body moving. But what I'm really, really pleased to hear currently in the especially over the last 5 years, but it's only amplifying now, is just how much nutrition links to not only how we are physically, our physical health, but it's really amazing that someone's actually opening the lid on, well, it's not just your physical health that is causing you're having a detriment to, it's also your mental health.
Yeah, exactly.
And once I've been on this journey, I'm actually, it's gonna maybe rub a few people up the wrong way, because you I imagine you're the same, Lauren, which is I'm picky. I only eat, whole foods. I'm particularly aware now of when I eat processed food that, we term as unclean,
Yeah.
how much it affects me mentally more than just the physical side.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm really interested in going, well, what do you do for a school? Because this is the important part of these kind of chats with Pupil Progress is
Yeah.
I used to see it as a PE teacher and I'd see exactly this, which is kids will be like, I stopped a kid when we were 4 years in and he'd just picked up a pack of 12 donuts and he was 5 donuts in before
Yeah.
tutor time.
Yeah.
So,
That's a
I mean,
pretty
yeah,
standard
go on.
breakfast, isn't it, for a teenager, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. So I
Yeah.
mean, what I wanted to ask is what do you currently do for schools? And
Yeah.
then what I ask you some specific things around what you've learned,
Mm.
because there is this, oh, you know what, I know about nutrition and let me show you nutrition, but I'm also interested in what have you learned about what you already knew that is
Yeah.
now new understanding now that you're working with schools. So
Yeah. Yeah.
tell us what you do for schools and how it works and what service do you provide?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Just bringing it back to what you just said
Mm.
about, even when I studied nutrition, the world of food that we're living in today is so different. And so actually, I think a lot of schools maybe think that they teach nutrition, but the nutrition that we're teaching is so out of date that actually, it really needs updating. And it doesn't kind of explain the impact of food, which I think is the most important point. So I work with like primary schools and secondary schools and colleges. So yeah, there's a real age range. So I really have to tailor my workshops to the different ages, obviously. So when I work in, with primary schools, I've kind of created these two little characters, which are ultra processed Pete, who's a parrot, and I've got healthy Henry, who's a hen. And so yeah, I just try to make it really fun, and so that they can understand which foods kind of go with which character. So which foods that they want to kind of maybe just have sometimes, and which food that they can have all the time. And then I'll kind of cut out big body parts and get the children to be different body parts and different foods, and we can see the way that the food kind of impacts the different body parts. So I try to make it really fun and really interactive, but also they always really remember it as well. I think especially with younger children, it's really important that they learn like visually. So kind of standing there and talking to them and telling them about foods is just not going to work. So I try to make it as fun and interesting as possible. And I think that the impact with the young children especially, I've gone back to schools that I've worked with, and they always remember the characters. So they always, and they remember which food go with which. And the schools say that the children are actually kind of choosing, different snacks, or they're wanting to say, oh, actually, I want to be really strong, so I want to choose this, or I want to run really fast, so I'm going to choose this. So it is working, because I think, with little children, it's really important to say, well, if you eat this, you'll be strong or you'll be fast, or those kind of things, because that's what they tend to care about, isn't it? So that's the kind of thing that they will remember. And then with the secondary schools and colleges, I take in loads of different food products. So mainly kind of ultra processed food and processed food, so that they can kind of see the difference. And we really dissect and go into the ingredients. I think a lot of the time the students are really shocked that foods that they thought they were picking that were really healthy are actually not. So
Oh,
that's
give
kind
me
of,
some examples.
yeah, so like I don't know if you've heard of like health halos. So things that say they're kind of high in protein, low in fat, high in
Yes, yes.
fiber, high in, all these like different health claims. And I always say to my students, like, I don't know, I've never seen a broccoli like saying that it's high in fiber, like it just doesn't need to.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, and so it's all those kind of things like juice, they always think like orange juice, they're like, oh well, that's a good one. And I'm like, okay, let's have a look at the sugar. And so it's just kind of doing loads of myth busting with them.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of the monster cans, they have like
Wow.
vitamins, but they're like, yeah, but miss, like there's vitamins in it. And I'm like, yeah, but they add the vitamins in to make you buy it. It doesn't make it healthier. So it's, yeah, lots of kind of myth busting with them. And I take in a lot of the ingredients as well. So a lot of the gums and acids and flavorings and things like that you see in ultra processed food. I'll take them in and get them to experiment, like mixing it with water, and then they can see actually what it looks like inside their bodies. And then I think giving them with teenagers, you know, they don't like to be told kind of what to do, or that they can be reluctant to make change. So I always kind of give them all the information and then just kind of look at simple swaps they could maybe potentially make and think about more about what they can add in, rather than if, you know, what they can take away, because they can be reluctant to stop their cans of Monsters, you know. So yeah, so that's what I try and do. And the impact with the teenagers is incredible. I still work and do some safeguarding in a college at the moment, and so I'm always encouraging the students when they come in to see me, especially if they've got that kind of low level anxiety and they're not really sure why, or they kind of feel sad all the time. I'm like, let's just have a look at like what you're eating, like, and you know, if they would be up for making some changes. And the students that do, every single one of them sees improvements within days, and they are like flabbergasted. They're like, how? And I'm like, it has a massive impact on our mood. And I'm just doing a massive research project at the moment with 2 colleges. We've got about 30 teenagers. They're kind of undergoing, we're kind of tracking their mood and their sleep and their anxiety levels on kind of what they were currently eating. And then we kind of try to switch them onto a more of a whole food plan. And we've been doing it for 4 weeks, and the impact already is insane. Like their results are completely different.
I need to dive into that. So
yeah, sure.
That's amazing. So a couple of questions I have for you. If the school's bringing you in, are they pulling you into timetable, or are they saying, I need you to come in for a PSHE lesson, or are they saying, look, we've blocked out a half a day? Are they getting you in for like a 6-week period every time, you know, at the same time every 6 weeks, or is it all, you know, a mixture of all of those?
Yeah, it's a mixture. So I run like specifically if they've got specific students who they feel like really need help, especially with their nutrition and mental health, then I'll run like a 6-week program where I go in and specifically work with like a group of students. Most of the time it's like assemblies or PSHE lessons that I'll go in and do. So yeah, but it can be arranged depending on what the schools need. And I have been back into schools as well. So, you know, yeah, kind of running an assembly, and then the schools have recognized that, oh, actually there's these few students that kind of have been really interested in it and need a bit more help, and then go back in and run some smaller sessions with those. So yeah, it really depends on what the school needs.
That's brilliant. I wanted to ask that question because hopefully some people are going to start listening to this, or, you know, they'll go, great, I know this is a problem, and then I've got an implementation, so I understand that there's actually someone I can, because these are things we know, but then how do you do something about it? Well, if there's someone there that can do something about it, someone can literally email you and say, Lauren, I really love what you're doing, I know it, can you come in and do it? Then this is what we're trying to connect people with. The other thing I'm really interested in, because the hardest job you have, which is what I really empathize with, is convincing people of what you definitely know as the expert, but what I've also learned just through my own experience of cleaning up my diet and what it means for me mentally, right? The hardest job you've got is actually showing people that it works, because you go, well, because I ate that doesn't really impact that. Well, you like, it does.
It does,
Trying to show someone. So my question is, especially around the anxiety in food, and also that tracking mood and sleep. How are you tracking the sleep and the mood so you can actually physically turn around to someone and say, look, this is where you were and this is where you are now, and it's because we did X? So how are you doing that? Because it's so important that a school can show that it actually is doing something versus it's just ticking a nice box.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's been the point of this kind of research project that we're kind of conducting at the moment, because yeah, so you can do it in a few ways. So we're doing, for example, the research project, we've kind of got them to score themselves. So how many times a night do they kind of wake up? This is obviously with the older children. And what are their kind of moods, how happy do they feel on a daily basis, where would they kind of rank their anxiety, and we've been doing like strength tests and speed tests and that kind of thing as well, because we're doing it on our sports students, so they're quite interested to see the impact of that. And then we're tracking them every day for another 6 weeks after that, so then we can compare their scores. And like I said, at the moment we're only 4 weeks into a 2-month kind of research project, but the results already, you can see there is improvements already from just changing their diet. So that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it with the younger children is when they have a session like with me, you can then ask them questions after. So like if I had these two foods, like which one is going to make you feel more tired, or which one is going to give you more energy? And maybe if you wanted to run really fast in your race, which one are you going to choose now? So you can measure impact by the choices that they would make before the session, and then the choices that they would make after. So that's another way that you can measure impact. But I do think we'll probably get onto it in a minute, but it's a whole school thing. It needs to be something that the whole school is on board with, because you can kind of do little bits with different children, but it needs to be that whole ethos, I think, within a school, so that you're all singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had to manage. So do you remember I don't know if they've still got it, because I've been out teaching for a while, but it's the healthy schools status.
Yes, I do.
And they're different levels.
Yeah.
And one of my responsibilities was to actually to get that award, right?
Yeah.
School status. And it was really challenging when speaking to either the kitchen or even, the vice principals that were, what's wrong with our food?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay, pretty much every meal that you serve is quite heavy. And then they started to diversify, and, this whole idea. So every Friday was fish and chips Friday.
Yeah.
which is fine, because, as long as you're actually cooking chips and they're actual chips, not processed chips, and you're eating actual fish, not processed fish.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with fish and chips, but we're doing that every Friday. But most kids are doing like quite big portions, and then they're also adding baked beans on top, which are really high in sugar.
Yeah.
And then then when you start talking about portion sizes, I absolutely agree. It is a whole school thing, because you can't just do this one small group of students. I suppose really there's so many questions I want to ask. I don't really know where to start. My brain's going all over the place. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on, which is, have the teachers seen an impact? So, for example, I'm aware, because given the way you're teaching, it seems really interactive and quite immediate, the connection. It's like, wow, that's in my body, or that's the ingredients. And then the students that you're going at primary level, which is wonderful, because you've got to engage with them at that level.
Yeah.
Have teachers turned around to you and said, you know what? I've actually seen a significant shift in how they are as a person as a result of your work?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I run the workshops, I always encourage the teachers to be in there as well, because I think a lot of the teachers are really shocked, and I don't think think many of us recognize the direct impact that food's having. So when a student's kind of coming in the morning and they cannot concentrate, or they're extremely tired, or they can't focus, or they're really hyper, like I always say to the teachers, the first thing that you should be asking, with a child is like, what have you had to eat and drink this morning? Because it's actually looking, what is going on for them. If you don't know what they've had to eat and drink, it's really hard to establish like what is going on inside their little bodies to make them be behaving this way. And I think that's an impact that's really measurable, is the difference in, like children in the morning. So just the difference in having like a nutritious breakfast compared to having something high in sugar or not having anything has such an immediate effect on a child's behavior, that's something that's you can notice instantly with children. And that's something that I've had feedback from schools saying that they can notice that the child's behavior is different from choosing, or that they've chosen different snacks at break time and things like that. So yeah, it is really impactful for teachers to recognize as well. But I also think when we're talking about mental health in schools, we need to make sure that we are saying to students, when I speak to students to do with mental health, the first thing I will say to them is, have you had something to eat or drink, or like what have you had? Because I don't want to enter into a conversation. I'm like, right, let's go and get some food first, because they're not going to be able to manage their emotions or regulate themselves if they're running on loads of sugar, loads of caffeine, or no food at all. So I think before food always needs to be a basis of everything. Like, how can we expect a child to learn if their brain is in chaos from the breakfast they've just eaten, or that they haven't eaten anything, or if a child is in absolute floods of tears? We need to be thinking like it might not just be about something that's happened. Food has a huge effect, and so it's a conversation that we need to be having and thinking about and asking our children. And then from having those conversations and asking those questions, the children start to think about it more. So they start to marry up. Oh, okay, well, maybe I'm feeling this way because of what I ate, and they can start to kind of link it together themselves.
That what you've just said there, that's the critical part, which is as soon as the individual starts making the link, that's where the gold is. Because adults is different, because bring alcohol into the equation. I've learned if I have a weekend where I've had a few glasses of wine on Friday, and then actually, do you know what, I might finish that bottle on the Saturday. It's kind of Sunday and Monday that you start to think, you know what, I'm not in the best of moods. I'm a little bit, I feel a bit down. And then when you actually start to, right, you know what, I'm going to the gym Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm sweating out my system. You then start to go, oh, I feel really good today.
Yeah.
And well, it must be because it's Wednesday. No,
it's not. Yeah.
It's not. It's because you've gone and done some exercise, you're eating better, and you've stopped drinking alcohol, right? Yeah. So I know that now. And I'm like, yeah, do you know what? You just need to have a couple of weekends where you're only having a couple of glasses of wine on a Friday, right?
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
So what I'm particularly interested in here is, when you go into schools, because you touched on it earlier, which is, it's also frightening what schools don't know. So for head teachers, get to listen to this. Vice principals, I'm talking to you. You might think that your school knows about nutrition because you've got someone in your room and they're on a timetable. What is it you've uncovered that is still being taught? We don't have to name and shame.
Yeah.
What is still being taught that is completely so far out of date that is, it needs to be changed? And, have you got some examples of what's still being discussed as this is what good nutrition looks like, which is not anymore?
Yeah, I think what nutrition isn't really covered in schools. I mean, I know that there's there's food tech, and we might have a look at the kind of, the Eat Well, NHS Eat Well plate. I mean, in regards to that, I think we just need to look at our hospital food to show that I'm not sure the NHS are giving out great nutrition information. If you've ever been to hospital, you will know. And I think but also it's really outdated. Like the you know, the nutrition information that we teach. Yes, I think a child can probably recognize, you know, what a healthy food is in terms of, you know, a piece of fruit and a chocolate bar. That's kind of the basics of what we teach, especially in primary school. But our food world now is completely different. So, you know, we've got like a pack of, you know, maybe apple squares, and children might think that that's really healthy, but actually they're not. And this is where we need to update our kind of information. And that's what I do, is kind of concentrate on this ultra processed world that we've got going on now, and this kind of misleading food world, because most children can distinguish between, you know, a vegetable and something that's not healthy, but it's all these other foods which are really misleading that we need to kind of make them aware of, so that they can, you know, make those healthier choices. And it is really hard in schools. I think I managed to change the food in 2 schools that I worked with. It was such hard work, because firstly, I think, you know, a lot of schools are run as businesses, and so I got a lot of pushback saying, but we make a lot of money from the donuts. And I was like, yeah, but is that really ethical?
That is insane.
Yeah. So
That
I
is
think,
insane.
yeah, well, there are children, and you know, I understand that, you know, we all have to run businesses, but in terms of, for me, like, doing what's right is way more important than profit.
That can't have been that was an actual conversation.
Yes, that was an actual
That
conversation.
makes me so angry.
I know,
Well,
but I think,
anyone that
yeah,
watches this, and go and speak to your bursars to make sure that you're not buying this horrendous food because it makes a little bit more money for the school, because that is
yeah.
outrageous.
Yeah, and I've had multiple conversations with schools. I think there's this, especially I've had lots of conversations with primary schools. Primary schools have a real thing about giving puddings, and some of the feedback I've had is that children really need it when it's a cold day. They need puddings to warm them up. I've had that the parents really want, you know, their children to kind of have puddings, and if we took it away, that would cause a bit of disruption from the parents. And yeah, I think when I've said to them, but yeah, you know, why do we need our children to have puddings every day? And I don't really have an answer. You know, it's just kind of, yeah, all these kind of other reasons. And I think if we really, you know, get down to it, actually it's just really old school. Like, if we don't recognize now the impact that food's having, and we're still living kind of, you know, we're living in a time when we didn't realize how these foods were affecting us, and now we do. We're still giving them to our children, but we have the knowledge now, and I think that's what's really frustrating for me. But it is a whole, you know, it's hard to change a whole school food, but it can be done, because it has been done. But I think the really important thing is that, especially with the schools I worked with, before we changed the food, we made sure that we educated all the students as to why. Like, why we're doing this, why it's important. We're not just suddenly taking away your donuts one day without giving you an explanation. We educate you to make you realize the impacts, and then we make, you know, small changes. So it can be done, but yes, it can be very difficult. Yeah.
What blows my mind? What blows my mind is just how low down this is perceived in the priority list.
It is, yeah.
But
Right.
drives every single. For example, I know we had conversations around providing breakfast and providing, you know, nutritional lunches
Yeah.
and the cost to the school. But then I'm thinking about the number of teachers that left our school because of behaviour, and the cost of replacing those teachers because the behaviour was so poor from immediately in the morning. I wonder what the cost is of actually going, well, let's bring in let's provide an opportunity for anyone that wants to come in at 7:45 in the morning and have a nutritious breakfast to start the day, right?
I know.
What's the cost of that versus how many teachers go, oh, do you know what? There's a few kids that are pretty bad and they, the behavior is not great some of the time, but most of the time and actually stay and love the school.
Yeah.
That's just one small example, by the way. That's not like
exactly. And I think there's it has such a big impact on attendance and grades, and God, the amount that schools spend on mental health, when actually if the children ate a little bit healthier, the mental health issue wouldn't be a problem in the first place. So it's like 24%. So children that eat like a healthier diet achieve 24% higher grades than children who don't. And it's
sorry, say that again.
So children who eat a healthier diet on average achieve 24% higher grades than children who don't. And it's the same with attendance. So but attendance is massive. If a child has a healthier diet, they are twice as likely to attend school 100% of the time than children who don't. So it has a huge impact. It's so like you said, I think it's so downplayed on the impact that it has, and not only to our schools, but if you think about our children's health, it's like 80% of our kind of illnesses that we're experiencing nowadays are directly impacted from the foods that we're eating. And they're kind of saying that it's the same with our mental health. Like so many of our mental health issues is directly impacted by the food that we're eating nowadays as well. So it's not just this kind of their school life, it's the whole impact that they have from that. They just kind of continue this cycle of being addicted to sugar and eating bad food, and mentally feeling not great, and then kind of getting really sick, and it just it's a knock on for the rest of their lives. And I feel like we have as teachers and people that kind of get to work with these young people, we have such a responsibility to make sure that we kind of look after their well-being, because it can it impacts them forever.
I mean, if that the statistic around 24% in comparison in grade performance,
it's huge.
It's sad, but that is a way that I'll be communicating. I can see the top of whatever social post we put out as a result of this conversation will be like, if you actually want to start impacting on grade performance, it does include teaching and learning, it does include tracking and monitoring, it does include improved communications but a real key to that is the student's nutrition if you want a better performance. So that's a frightening statistic that we want to share without question. It actually leads quite nicely onto one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about. So if we've got teachers that were listening to this and school leaders listening to this, and they just took a little snippet, what would you be saying to tell year 11s? First off, because there's we want to talk about a little bit about backstep slightly. So when my daughter was going through her A-levels and through her GCSEs, I was trying to give her some advice about what to eat in the morning. Don't just, a really sugary bowl of cereal, because you're going to get that massive spike and then you're going to crash halfway through the exam, and this is what you should eat. And she really subscribed to it, and actually it worked. So, but we also want to be proactive. So let's do that for the moment, right? So what is it you would say to students? You're coming into your exam series, and what is it? How can you best prepare yourself as the whole? The morning of, the days before, but also we're probably going to bleed into, well, we also want to have this as an ongoing lifestyle. But what would you say to students that are going to go into these mock exams now? Because you've got a way of testing now, right? You've got, mock exams coming up, or have just been sat, or new mock exams coming up maybe around Easter. And the students can, test it in the morning, have X, Y, and Z, don't eat so-and-so. And how did you feel throughout the whole entire exam?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's really important to tell the students what you eat in the days prior and the morning of your exam will
Yeah.
affect your exam performance. Like that's really important to tell, to make them understand. If they really want to do, as well as possible, then this is like a massive important part of it. It's not just kind
Mm.
of what you're learning, it's how you're going to regulate your body. So I think that the lead up, the few days before, the day before is really important. So making sure that you're not eating kind of anything sugary. Like you said, that's going to give you that massive crash. It's probably going to affect your sleep, so then you're going to be tired and not be able to kind of perform as well in the exam,
So
that morning.
let's name and shame. So we're talking about, Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
soft drinks, anything.
Fizzy drinks, any cereals, chocolate, energy drinks, just processed foods. So if you've got like pre-made burgers or packages or takeaways or anything like that, so you want to be staying away from that definitely the few days before your exam, specifically the day before. You don't want to be consuming anything like that. And then the morning of, you need to make sure that, I would say, you need like a protein breakfast. So you need like eggs on toast is like best, and it's really simple as well. Or making sure that you've got you're having like carrot sticks or cucumber sticks and eggs and cheese, and just whole foods, rather than if you go and have a bowl of cereal or a can of
Mm.
Monster, you're going to be in that exam feeling like you're going to be on a real big high, and then you're going to fall asleep. You're not going to be able to concentrate as well because your brain's in chaos, because all that sugar is kind of consuming your body. So I think it's just key to let them know that it really does impact their results and how well they'll be able to concentrate in the exam. So I know now I will, if I've got something that I'm going to be doing, I'll make sure that I'm really careful about the foods that I eat, the day before or the morning of, because I know that it's going to impact, my brain power basically. So, I think that's something that people don't really like realize, like, oh, if I eat that, actually, I'm not going to be able to think as well, or I'm going to be on this sugar crash. So I think it's a really important tip to kind of tell our children.
So what's fascinating, I mean, there's hundreds of examples. So this is just one I'm thinking of. So not many people remember or understand, or they choose to remember or choose to forget. It was actually Kellogg's that trained us into the belief that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah.
Now, we've got to take on one chunk at a time. So sometimes I don't have breakfast because this whole idea of fasting, and people think that our fasting is this fad. Well, actually, it's not. It's how we actually developed as human beings, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing this slow transition, but to, if I think about my childhood, my parents were wonderful, but every morning we wake up, have a bowl of cornflakes, and it was, sprinkled sugar on top.
Yeah.
Even
Well,
on the
that's what we've been
advert.
told to eat, isn't it? Like that's what they've made us believe that is a good breakfast. Yeah.
Exactly that. So it's now actually getting into students that these are the big hitting words. If you want to do better in your exam, you want a better grade, if you are looking to get into your dream university, don't go and have a Chinese takeaway or a takeaway the night before, or even the days running in, because of all the chemicals that are riddled through those, through those, the processing of that food. Can you also give me some examples? Because it's frightening how many people don't necessarily know what a processed food is. So chocolate bars and, stuff like that is obvious. What's the definition of a processed food and an ultra processed food? Because some food is processed, like minced beef is processed because it's not just a muscle but that's healthy because it's minced beef, right? Or it's minced chicken. What is an ultra processed? Give us some examples where someone's like, oh wow, I didn't know that was, or you need reminding of it.
Yeah, sure. So so an ultra processed food, a really easy way to kind of understand it and kind of separate it from a processed food, is like it's a food that has been kind of taken apart, put into a factory, lots of chemicals, sugars, acids, gums added into it, and it's been put back together to make a food-like substance. So it is not a real food. So if you look on the back of an ultra processed food, it will probably have five or more ingredients, and if there are ingredients that you don't recognize, that you wouldn't be able to find in your kitchen, then it's an ultra processed food. Yeah, the difference with a processed food is, like you said, like a tin of tomatoes that's been put into a can, but it is still a tin of tomatoes, or beef mince. It's gone through a process like cheese has, milk has, but it's still a whole food. There's not been loads of chemicals, sugar, additives, all that kind of thing added to it. So the best thing to do is kind of look on the back of a packet. But the food industry are getting more clever and recognizing that we are cottoning on. So they are kind of disguising lots of words to kind of make it sound like it's better than it is. So when you kind of see a lot of juice concentrates or fruit flavorings, they're all just names for sugar. So the food industry have 262 different names for sugar to try and hide it into their kind of ultra processed foods, so that they can, so that we don't recognize kind of what's going in there and we think it's healthier than it actually is. I think it's understanding. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat. It's understanding, the difference. And I think the one that always shocks me the most is like the sandwiches, especially from like Pret. And you'd think that's going to be a much healthier option. But yeah, if you look on the back of these sandwiches, they've got like 30 plus ingredients, and that's all kind of sandwiches that you can get from anywhere. But yeah, I always think that the sandwiches are quite shocking, because even if you kind of go for one that's, like tuna and salad, and you're like, oh, well, that's a good option, but then you look on the back of a packet and actually there's so many different ingredients. So I think that's one of the most shocking ultra processed foods are sandwiches.
I'm glad you said that, because I watched it. There was a short snippet. It was a longer conversation, but it went kind of viral on social media. And they had a conversation with a baker, and he basically took a white bread, King's Mill or Warburton's, whatever one that's just very common in everyone. Go through the supermarket, put it in there. I can bulk buy it, so it's definitely in schools and even like hotels.
Yeah.
And the baker's like, that's not bread.
No.
The guy is like, what do you mean? It's like, it's something that looks like bread.
Yeah, but
something that tastes like bread, but it's not bread. He says, well, if it looks like bread and is bread, then and tastes like bread, then it is bread. And he's like, no, let me explain it to you. If I was going to go and bake a loaf of bread, there's not one single ingredient that I would take from that list.
Yeah.
Even start the process of making a loaf of bread, right?
Yeah.
And it's then you go, oh wow.
Yeah.
And this is why it's sad, because like a sourdough.
Yeah.
I will go and buy a sourdough now. It's much more expensive.
Yeah.
But I will eat less of it because it's actually a loaf of bread. Right?
And it fills you up more.
And it fills you up, and it's gonna. So it's just fascinating. I'm glad you said, because the sandwiches in the supermarkets and the meal deals, our kids used to. It was like a conveyor belt all the way to Tesco's and Sainsbury's on meal deals.
Yeah.
Can of Coke, packet of crisps, or can of Coke, chocolate bar.
Yeah.
A sandwich.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. And it's not food. Like, it is not food. It's just, they're like substances. It's just, it's just not food at all. And that's why our bodies are, that's why it's causing so much chaos, because our bodies just aren't up for all these chemicals and all this sugar all the time. And that's why we're getting so sick, and that's why our mental health in our children. Obviously there's social media and there's lots of things that come into play, but a massive one is food. And it's no wonder when you start looking into how many chemicals and how much sugar they're consuming every day, it's just shocking. And it's no wonder that we're in this kind of mess, really. It's pretty scary, but we just need to, make change. We need to realize that we have to do something about it, and do what we can. And we obviously need, we need it to come from the top. We need government to change the laws, and that is happening. Like the 9 p.m. watershed and that's something that me and the Children's Food Campaign worked with Parliament to change. So they are bringing things in, but the food industry is massive. Like it's absolutely, it's a monster. And there's people all in government, all linked to the food industry, who get paid a ton of money to kind of help them with the regulations and laws and things like that. I think it says there's like about 9 scientists that make a box of cereal because they want to make it as addictive as possible, and they want to sell as much as they can.
Oh, you've just reminded me. They we all understand that there's a specialist in Facebook that's going, right, 400,000 people less than yesterday clicked on this button. Let's move the button and make it red, right?
Yeah.
But what they don't understand, what you've just touched on there, which is news to so many people, is there's a group of people going, right, people are more likely to eat something that has this feeling in their mouth that creates this, like a donut is the single most addictive food that we can eat, because it's the perfect relationship between sugar and starch.
Yeah.
That means your brain is like, it's in complete confusion about how much your body needs it, and shuts down certain receptors that mean you eat 12 of them and not, eat which you only need one. You don't even need one.
Yeah, exactly. I always say, because it switches off our hunger hormones. So it completely interferes with that brain gut connection. And so that's, I always say, especially when I kind of work with a lot of people, I'm like, that's the reason you can eat like 12 donuts. You wouldn't be able to eat like 12 butternut squashes. Like, it would just be impossible. And that's where you can see, because it completely switches off that hunger hormone, and you can just eat and eat and eat them. And and then obviously the effects that's having on our brain when we are consuming maybe food that we should be as well. So there's so many impacts of it, isn't there?
That's crazy. The schools that still sell donuts, they did a study on rats, and it was, I think they put bread and sugar separately, and then the rats would eat until they were full, and then they would wake up and they'd eat more. And have a bit of sugar water. But when they actually just literally served them donuts and water, they ate so much that they just died, because they couldn't physically stop eating the donut. And just to think, you'd come in at most breaks, a student can go and have either some kind of a drink or juice, and then go and buy a donut, and then they can have a donut for dessert as well. Absolutely frightening.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
So it was kind of a nice little segue into just not, just wrapping up, so that we can kind of give someone a little bit, not a huge long chat to kind of get through, but it also kind of segues nicely onto the work you've been doing with the Children's Food Campaign and the Real Food Rebellion. And also, just, I'd love to, we'll tell the audience after this where they can find you, and where your website is, etc., etc. What's happening with the Children's Food Campaign, and also the Real Food Rebellion?
So the Children's Food Campaign. So we met with the Education Minister, which was Stephen Morgan, when was it? 2 months ago now, and we kind of set apart. We basically made a manifesto of the top 5 laws that we want change for children's food. So I'll link that as well, so that people can have a look. And please do sign it, because it's really important that we get as many signatures as possible. But we basically presented this manifesto, and kind of, we've done loads of research with parents as well, to kind of see what they find really hard, because I think it's really important that parents come in here, and especially with schools. This is one thing that I always get is, well, we can change, you know, what the children think or what the children do, but then they go home and obviously it's their parents buying the food and it's their parents, you know, kind of giving them their dinners. And I think what's really important is, that it does come from the top down. So we're trying to, you know, we recognize that it's, yes, we can take individual responsibility, but also we really need the government to make change and put the, you know, make these laws, because it's so hard to distinguish between when you're being told that this is what you should feed your child for breakfast or lunch or for a snack because it's something good, and then actually, you know, you're finding out that actually it's got loads of sugar in. And you know, I genuinely believe that all parents, you know, do want the best for their children and they all want their children to be healthy, but I feel like the food industry makes it, you know, and the laws that we have around food make it so difficult for parents to do that. And so I think, you know, it's more about kind of trying to empower parents and giving them information, but also giving them information that they can use to make easy changes and that are really affordable. So we look a lot at the Children's Food Campaign about the kind of bridging that gap between you know, families that are on low incomes and families that are on higher incomes, because there's a massive gap there in terms of what our children are eating in terms of what their income is in the family. So we need to kind of, you know, bridge that, especially students that are on kind of free school meals. So so one of the things that we're asking the government to do in terms of free school meals is, I don't know, they kind of get a certain amount, don't they? Children do for lunch. But what happens is, you know, if they spend however much on a panini at break time because they're hungry, then they don't have enough money to get the full meal at lunch, and they'll only have like £1 left, and then they end up just only being able to buy chips. And so I think, one of our things is that, you know, a child should be able to buy food at break time if they're hungry, but they should also have enough money to be able then to buy the full meal that the school are providing. But
so is that what's happening? Is they get a credit and they can spend that credit how they want?
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah. And so that's not regulated at all, in terms of, and that's, you know, and that's for our lowest income children, who are the children that actually, you know, they need the kind of the healthy meals the most, because not so many of them are having the healthiest meals at home. But I think it's really, we need to kind of it's trying to speak to parents in a way that is non-judgmental, but you need parents on board. So a lot of the time in my workshops, I'll always make things for the children to take home, which are like little tip sheets for like to help parents, and like really like budget recipe sheets that they can take home and try and make with their parents. Because I think it's really key to try and get them on board. Sorry, I know we've got a bit off topic there from the question that you asked, but
I find it fascinating. And there's also these little things that, if I'm honest, just really frustrates me, because the food industry is, you know, multi-trillion-dollar global problem. So it's difficult to take that monster on. But individual schools that can't actually just put a system in place that says, look, we're going to take that, and it gives them an allocation for a full lunch at lunchtime, and at break time we can give them some fruit if they're hungry. And, you know, worst case scenario, which is not, you know, ideal, but they might have a period of time at break where they don't get whatever it is they want, which is that panini or donut that they're going to spend more money on than the full lunch. But then when it comes to lunch, they're guaranteed a full lunch, right? And it might not actually, because somebody, you know, I taught in Bermondsey for 12 years, for 10 years. So I was a teacher for 12. Some of the kids weren't even then guaranteed dinner at home. So coming in for a full dinner, you know, like a full, you know, maybe it was a roast dinner on a Wednesday, or maybe it was, we were quite a multicultural school. So there'd be different themes throughout the week, which was wonderful. Something that changed over the time that I was there. But some of these kids might not, they might have that panini, might not have enough for lunch, and then they're going to go home and not have anything.
Have dinner, yeah. And I think that's why that meal at school is so key. Like, it's so key that we get that right, because most of, a lot of the children are not having, that is the only nutritious meal that they're going to get. And if we make that a meal that is not nutritious at all, we're really letting them down. Like, we have that one opportunity at school to give them something nutritious, and instead we're feeding them with crap, basically. So it's so key that we make that meal count.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think the work you're doing is unreal. I'd be interested to have further conversations about how Pupil Progress can support, because it's something very close to my heart. I'm, as a former PE teacher, I did my, I used to be a PT personal trainer a long time ago. Really understand what you're doing and why it's so important for you head teachers and vice principals and people in leadership positions that have the power. I get the importance of school performance, and it might not necessarily be perceived as something as important, but if you want your students to do well in their exams, what can you lay on for the next 4 weeks through May in the lead up to the exams and on the day of the exams that you can allocate in budget that says every morning our kids that are going to sit exams can come in and get some eggs on sourdough toast. They can get, a portion of maybe porridge that has got something, maybe a little bit of honey on it, some fruit, something that is going to set them up for maybe 2 exams in that day versus a load of rubbish cereal that just is going to, cause them to crash. And also get Lauren into your schools, because she's doing incredible work, and I couldn't think of a better spend of resource than educating our teachers and young people on what it is we should be eating. So I really appreciate your time, Lauren. We'll connect definitely after this conversation. I'd like to get you back on as well and have this chat nearer the exam series time, because even if we talked about the same thing again and someone's more likely to watch it or catch it another time, then we should definitely do it, because I'm really up for sharing your message. It's so important.
Yeah,
so
definitely. Thank you.
Thanks for your time, and looking forward to speaking, soon with regard to how we can support some of the things that you're working on, especially governmentally. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Brett.
Great, thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye.
So I think Laura, Alistair's going to bring us back in.
Okay. Was that all right?